listening to CaveRadioBroadcasting.com. The words and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm handling Howard's quarterback duties today. This is Dave Hooper. I'm here with Tony. How's it going, Tony?
Good. How you doing?
Today is, June 1st, 2017? Yes.
Exactly.
And if I remember our intro monologue spiel, a few things. This is down the rabbit hole, not down the conventional hole. Don't go believing... Don't trust everything we say. Not that we're out to fool you, but we make mistakes. We don't want you to carry them forward. In fact, I'm going to correct a mistake I made earlier about Buzz Aldrin. But before we get into that, how are you guys doing? Tony?
Doing great. It's beautiful outside. I haven't been outside all day, and I'm wearing a sweater.
And a big, thick black sweater. I've got
man, it's hot
wife beater T-shirt on and shorts today. And Kenny? Not Kenneth, because that's your in trouble name. Kenny, how are you doing?
Exhausted.
Yeah? How come?
Work.
Yeah?
And that's all I do. And then tomorrow I got to do the first day of the Grand Prix on Belle Isle with the Riff.
Oh, they're doing a Grand Prix already this weekend?
Yep, it's this weekend.
Yeah, summer began. My hometown has its little, it's called the Island Fest. Gross Eel. I got a buddy in you haven't met him yet, Tony, but a friend of mine, Dave Marino, he's in a band with another friend of mine, Burdette Milkins, and a few guys that they're good musicians, really good musicians.
What kind of music?
Little of everything from Led Zeppelin to the Grateful Dead to their own stuff.
More in the classic rock genre?
Absolutely. So I think I'm going to take my son and maybe Ginger. And I talked to her. Ginger, if you're listening, I hope you feel better, honey. She's got vertigo, which was being explained to me. I've never had it, but apparently it's... The way she described it, it sounds like how I felt when I'm kneeling before a toilet and I can't get that room to stop spinning. Yeah. Kenny, do you have any experience with vertigo?
No.
Or just the kneeling at the toilet part? That
when you're drunk.
Everyone in this room's got experience.
Just make it stop spinning.
Exactly. I'll do anything to make it stop. And
it's the worst when you're laying there, too. And you just lay there and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 times, once that room starts to spin, just even it's like, oh, man, I know where this is going. And there's
and you start feeling sweaty, too. And
there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I say 9 out of 10 times because every now and then, well, I don't really party like this anymore, but at least not with the frequency I used to. Every now and then you can fall asleep before it hits DEFCON 5, but that usually does not happen, at least not in my book. So have we gotten all the particulars out of the way? Oh, if you guys want good printing, inkonpaperprinting.com. And if you're looking for help for an elderly loved one, check out eldercarecares.com. Tony, do you want to say anything about your business?
No, I'm not going to plug today.
Okay. You're not going to whore yourself out like I just did? Good for you.
That's embarrassing. I just don't want to do
that. Yeah, only idiots would do something so low. So,
no, I would. I'm going to come on with a plug here with the DMSC. I'm not ready to do that yet. But,
what is the DMSC?
Domestic Manufacturer and Supplier Coalition. It's a group of manufacturers, American-owned companies, which I think is looks like it's becoming a big thing on the agenda right now, which is a good thing for us.
So you're not going to plug that today? You're saying like on another show down the road?
On another show, we'll have a little presentation. Yeah.
Okay,
but you can look it up. The website is up, but it's not 100%. But you can see some things there, and try to keep it non-political, but. You know how that goes.
Everything's political.
Everything's political.
What's the website address again?
It's the DMSC, the DMSC.org.
DMSC, the DMSC.org. DMSC, the DMSC.org.
So it's the DMSC.
Oh, I thought it was.
No.
The DMSC.org.
Correct.
All right. Well, I should not be in communications.
That's why I really want to plug,
especially today.
It'll confuse more people than.
All right, so I want to correct something from the past. Then I want to tell that little story of what just happened to us outside before we got on the air, and which is going to neatly lead into the topic today. Howard's going to be out. We're throwing
Howard's working on the treadmill like everybody else, right?
Yes, the treadmill of life.
The treadmill of life that we're on in our government.
A well-designed treadmill.
Right.
And I know this might not seem like there's a segue here, but remind me to tell you about the IRS. I'll talk about inviting problems into my life. I'm going to share a few things I came across. Anyhow, so one thing I wanted to correct. A few months back, we had talked about a tweet that had apparently or supposedly gone out from Buzz Aldrin. And it would have gone out in December of 2016, so just like 6 months ago. And the tweet, as it kind of blew up across the internet, said, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself." I think that's what it was. And I included it in this book that I'm working on. But part of the exercise of this book and the time-consuming part is I've really learned you can't just take a quote you find online and throw it into the book and assume that it's a real quote, because at the end of the day, one of the ways that you can lose your credibility in something like that is to include quotes that are not verified or that were never said. A prior example is the Kennedy quote that is very famous online, and I've actually seen it in some scholarly works. And the quote is, "There is a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child." I probably spent 12 to 15 hours looking for that quote. And I'm reading congressional records. I'm reading his personal notes. I'm reading everything I can get at the JFK library. I cannot find where he said it. Now, it doesn't mean that he did not say it, because frankly, there is a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child. And he was definitely waking up to the reality of the Illuminati and the central banking families and what their plans are for the world, not just the United States. We spoke a little bit about that, about how his mistress, Mary Pinchot Meyer, talked to Timothy Leary, the LSD researcher, experimenter, the day after Kennedy, in the weeks leading up to Kennedy's death and the day after Kennedy's death, in which she said, he's learning too much, he's changing too fast, he's in danger. And he died a week later, and then she was fearful for her own life. She told Timothy Leary to be careful for his own life. She was then murdered a few months after that. Her murder is still technically unsolved. Her husband, Cord Meyer, on his deathbed, admitted that it was the same people that killed Kennedy, essentially his employers, the Central Intelligence Agency, that were behind it. And they are one nasty, nasty organization when you really learn about them. So anyway, as I'm writing this book, I put down in the unverified part of the book, because every quote that is in there is I've got to go see it somewhere. I've got to see it, either hear it in the actual speech, I've got to see it in something they wrote, or it has to be transcribed by a reporter that was interviewing the person. It needs to be a direct source. Otherwise, it's not in there. Or, I should say, I pull it out of the book. And I was really excited about that one because we are all in danger. And it is evil itself, very much like the Kennedy quote. It is true, but did Buzz Aldrin actually tweet this? And when I started looking into it, I came to realize that he did not send that tweet. That tweet was a hoax put together by a website called Before It's News. And, Before It's News is famous for baiting. They create...
clickbait type?
Yeah, it bogs down your computer with ads. They've done a few hoaxes like that get a lot of attention. And somewhere along the way, this I believe it's a radio station called Superstation 95, ran with the story. And before you know it, it blows up all over the internet, and then legitimate folks start to take a look at it and come to the realization that this thing was not a real quote. And that's what I was doing literally just yesterday, because I'm going through the book right now, and I'm making sure that everything that's... I'm just essentially checking all my sources, as a journalist would get what that is, making sure that there's nothing in there that's BS. So I realized that the Buzz Aldrin quote didn't belong in there, at least not as a quote from Buzz Aldrin, but I'm still playing with the idea of keeping it in there with this for this purpose. And I'll actually read you the passage that goes with the quote, because this book, the 401 book, it's a series of quotes that really mirrors or parallels it's such a cliche word, but my awakening, the process, the opening of my eyes from living in blissful ignorance, which is the name of chapter 1, blissful ignorance, because most of us are in blissful ignorance, all the way to realizing, holy cow, this is a spiritual war. It's literally a war between good and evil, and we've got sides to choose, and this earthly story is probably going to wrap up soon. That's a lot to go through, even in 5 years. I mean, the cognitive dissonance that was at work inside my own head was...
Mm-hmm. What's curious, the 401? What's the background of the 401 title?
Now here, I need to check my sources on this also, but after a quick precursory look into 401 if you understand, you know what gematria is? Okay. That is many ancient languages like Hebrew or Latin. Every letter has a numerical value. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And once you understand that, there's a lot of additional information that you can glean by understanding the numerical value of sentences and statements that are all over the Old and New Testament. Mm-hmm. So if you put the name Jesus on a book, you've just closed off. There's not a marketing ploy, because what I believe our mission is, it's to get those people that are on the fence, but the ones that are, in a sense, brainwashed, where I was at least, because if someone mentions the name Jesus to me, if it was before 5 years ago, I've already...
Shut it down.
I've shut it down.
Right.
Now, maybe I didn't roll my eyes outwardly to them, but I've done it internally in my head. I've already categorized them as an idiot, as a no-thinking fool. And, I'm playing out all of the characteristics of the brainwashing that's gone on with us. Now, at the end of the day, we do this to bring light on who Jesus Christ was, what his identity truly is, and what he did, what his mission was. Because when you understand the game that we're in, that is the key to eternal life. And our souls are going somewhere. It's hard to prove that in a 1-hour radio show, but I'm so certain of it that when the day comes, if I'm offered the choice of having my head chopped off or going back on what I just said, I already know that,
mm-hmm.
we're going bowling with my head, basically. Not looking forward to it, and I hope it doesn't go down that way, but that's how certain I am of this.
I would agree. I'm at that point where...
Have you gotten there?
When this comes down, that's what's going to happen. And
you got there relatively quickly.
Well, I wouldn't say it's relatively quick. I mean, I agree with you. Everything that you talk about when you bring up the Bible, when you bring up Jesus, when you bring up any of these things, we're all conditioned to shut down. And what I'm finding more and more interesting is, because I'm looking at what are the arguments for people that may be an atheist or someone that may have different views on things. So you start looking into it, and these people in their arguments basically use different things out of the Bible. They might say the Old Testament. How can this and this and this happen?
How can God go and wipe, and tell the Jews to go and kill every man, woman, and child in a tribe? And same here. I'd be like, oh my, what kind of God are we dealing with?
Right.
Not knowing what's going on behind the scenes.
Right. And then when you start getting a few key points, some of the things we're going to bring up in the show, example today, when you start hearing these things, it starts to fall into place. Then you can start to understand what's going on in the Bible, and you can see, it talks about history. You could see what is, man's history and what is the actual word. So, long story short, the people, when they say you have to read the Bible for yourself, you have to get into it for yourself, that's really the truth, because if you're just taking somebody else's word for it, all those things sound very reasonable. Why would God do this? You say, yeah. Why would he do that? Why?
If God's a loving God, why would he let his son be tortured and die on a cross?
Right.
If God,
why did he go kill all these people, all the man?
Why would he flood the world and murder everybody?
Right.
Why is he going to do it again? But when you start to understand the story, and in this book, here's how ironic this is. I don't think there's a person in their 50s or 60s where that book, unless you've gone camping into the deep woods of Canada in the north, you're never more than 100 feet away from a copy of that book. Mm-hmm. Now, if you think about that, a book that was essentially marketed by what? No printing, no nothing. It was a book marketed by word of mouth, begun by 12 guys in the year 33 AD. And it just so happens that this person claimed that he's the Son of God. And 3 days before, or the day before he's crucified, his 12 closest disciples, they go running. I mean, at the Garden of Gethsemane, when those Roman centurions came in to get him, these guys took off like scared cats. Peter denies him 3 times. We all know this story. Most people at least have some familiarity with when the cock crows 3 times, you will have denied me, or you will deny me 3 times when the cock crows, whatever. And he breaks down crying because he, in a sense, his disloyalty was... But something happened 3 days later, because instead of being scared of Roman centurions, what these guys did, something 3 days later happened that changed their resolve in a way that they all spoke this message knowing they were doing it with their lives in danger. And many of them ended up dying at the hands of the Roman Empire, which is, frankly, that is the empire in control of the world today. It's just not advertised as the Roman Empire. They've moved from the Roman Empire as like the Caesars to the Vatican, which then moved into all the royalty of Europe, which then moved into the United States, etc. But you tell me you can't see it. You don't see it in our architecture. Yeah. Look at our Capitol buildings. Look at our laws. I mean, we're built on a Roman legal system. Look at the bloodlines of the people that are the royalty of Europe, and including our presidents who are all related to this royalty of Europe. You follow all that back, and they all descend from the bloodlines of the Roman emperors, and it's not a surprise to me that God predicted that this Roman Empire would go quiet for 2,000 years, and it would, the second Rome or the secret Rome or the New World Order is when it will unveil itself for once and for all in Earth history. It will last for 7 more years from that date, and then it will be completely wiped out, as will, unfortunately, the rest of humanity, at least the portion that has not chosen to get off of this prison planet. So before I get too far, though, I wanted to close out the Buzz Aldrin and the 401 number.
Yes.
So in 401, throughout not just the New Testament, but Jesus Christ was predicted from the very beginning of Genesis all the way up through the last book. These books written several thousand years before Jesus even came on the scene, telling the Pharisees, Sadducees, the Israelite religious leaders They knew everything ahead of time. They knew when he was going to be born. They knew in what city he would be born. They knew what area he'd come from. They knew the day he'd walk into Jerusalem. They knew how he would die. They knew so much about this guy. That's why the streets of Jerusalem were lined already on the day he rode in on that donkey. The donkey was another prophecy. That one doesn't carry that much weight because anyone that had read the Hebrew Scriptures and wants to counterfeit themselves as Jesus could ride in on a donkey and just say, I'm Jesus. However, the specific day he was supposed to ride in had been predicted to the day. And the people that had lined the streets, had lined the pathway into Jerusalem, were already there waiting because they knew he'd be coming in on that day. And he's the only person that did come in on that day. And to know that his arrival to that city had been predicted 1,000 years before, and that he would die 3 days later, and that he would rise again, and the manner he would die, that he would die on a cross, that none of his bones would be broken, he'd be pierced, describing torture and punishment that didn't even exist yet in the world. Hi, Dave. Hi. Dave DiBiase's here. Woo!
Dave's in the house.
I am here.
The day is saved. That's the line from a movie. I got to remember it. Well, anyway, so the reason for the name 401
Yeah.
is 401 is a numerical expression of the term alpha to omega.
Okay.
Which is, in Greek alphabet, it's A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
And it is one of the many names that Jesus Christ has throughout the Bible. He's the Son of Man. He's the Alpha to Omega. He is the Prince of Peace. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He's got dozens of names. Yeah. So now this is the part I need to verify. But apparently, the numerical value of any of the names that were given to him, certainly it's true for Alpha to Omega, which is in Greek A to Z. Mm-hmm. And he's the beginning and the end. He was there from the foundation, and he is what humanity is really all about. And the how would you say this? The gematria value, the geometrical, whatever. The number value of Alpha to Omega in Greek is 401. And I have to go verify this for myself before I would make this the official title of the book. But I understand that the value gematria-wise of all the other names given to Jesus add up to 401, all of them.
That would be interesting.
Really?
And the numerical value of all the names given for God add up to 801. Now, there are certainly numerical codes and consistencies in that book that anyone with a half of a mathematical brain, once they understand that, can begin to realize this is a supernatural document. Mm-hmm. And it is not some random 66 books brought together by some dudes. This thing is one story influenced by, I believe, the Spirit of God himself, the Spirit of Jesus, the Holy Spirit. Don't get me wrong. I don't know how all of this works yet. I've seen enough now. Most of it in the prediction of future events, mm-hmm. which we touched on a little bit, like in Ezekiel 38 and 30. Not just... we were talking to our buddy Nick. I think this was in a group chat, but he'd asked, why are you so sure the Bible's true?
Right.
And my answer to him, if I told you guys, sorry, but I'll say it for the listeners, because I've probably in the last 5 years, I've looked at probably 300 or 400 prophecies and went to find the information myself. And probably another 100 to 200 historical claims, incredible things like the flood, the Exodus, the crossing of the Red Sea, the walls of Jericho having tumbled down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I have yet to find one that is wrong. Mm-hmm. And now that's with my own eyes. I'm not going off of some Bible teacher or some freaking television show or... And you realize there's about 2,000 predictions in that book. 1,500 or so have come true. At some point, you need to rely a little bit on the work of others. I mean, the theory of evolution certainly is built on the existing work of others. But before I go out talking to the public about, you can count on this with absolute certainty or with not, I started looking at these predictions. And there are ways to assign mathematical probabilities to these predictions. One prediction, for instance... Well, anyway, so we closed out 401. We understand where that name comes from. I'll still get back to Buzz Aldrin, but... So you start looking at these predictions. Now, there was a prediction in there made by Jesus Christ himself, who in 33 AD, and this is not just written in the Bible. This was written by Seneca the Younger, Josephus. These are people that actually, and several other authors whose names, they're actually in the book, but they don't come to mind right off the top of my head. These are a lot of guys who would not want that story to be true. Their allegiances to the Roman Empire, for instance, they wouldn't want this really to be the Son of God. They wouldn't want this. They wouldn't even want him to exist. Yet they're writing. He's the most documented figure in human history, more documented than Alexander the Great. But we don't question his existence. But what are the forces at work in this world that make us question Jesus' existence? So he makes several predictions. I mean, perhaps he himself, just in the New Testament, makes, I don't know, can you guys correct me if I'm wrong, a few hundred?
I have no idea the answer to that question.
So if we talk about...
There's a lot of pages in that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Dancing with the Stars is on, and
where you have to sometimes rely on other people, because just how long would it take to go through and just skim through the New Testament and pick out all of his? That would be a huge undertaking.
Well,
just that.
Exactly.
So, you got to get into the language of the Bible. It was, it was transcribed from God to humans, and those humans originally wrote it in Aramaic or ancient Hebrew. And then it got translated to Greek. And then it got translated to Latin. And then it got translated into English and many other languages. There's going to be drop-off. And it's actually going to take a little extra effort on someone's part to cross their T's and dot their I's on this. But we are talking about a document that is literally from the creator of the universe. Or, if you're not there yet, I'll say potentially from.
Right.
A document that was written by someone that is not bound by the dimension of time, by someone that can predict the future. If you're a science fiction buff, I might say this is an extraterrestrial document written by a hyper-intelligence that has knowledge of who we are, where we've been, and where we're going that no man could ever have. And it's provable. That's one of the best snow jobs I think the devil ever put into this world, is that you need faith to believe it. Bullshit. Sorry, I'm swearing. You can prove without a doubt that book is true. Just, you guys want to indulge me for a second?
Absolutely, dude. I don't question that one bit.
So, Jesus Christ is 33 AD. We know a few things. Rome is in charge of pretty much the world. Go back to the book of Daniel, that we now know Rome is going to be, before Rome even came into power, they were predicted to be the Roman Empire. And he's writing from the days of Babylon. The Greeks would then ultimately take over Babylon. Romans would take over the Greeks. You can follow all the pagan gods from Babylon to Greece to Rome.
Egypt.
And they're here today. You're going to like our topic today, because this is going to be right up your alley. We're not even into our topic yet. So just a few off the top of my head. 33 AD, Israel's been back in the land. Remember, there was already one dispersion. They screwed up once, and God sends them into exile with the Babylonians. They screw up a second time, and he multiplies the penalty by 7. 400 years,
Yeah.
they're
400
dispersed.
years, yeah.
They're now back in the land. It's the third time they're back. And they're about to make the biggest mistake of their nation's history. Because God said, if you do not accept my son, and he already knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
If you don't accept my son, your punishment will increase by 7 yet again. So, forgive me because I'm not prepared to talk about this. The numbers, forget my numbers, but when you figure it out, it comes out to almost 2,000 years, and that'll come to play in a second. Historians, scribes, the recorders of history of the day, it doesn't just need to be these 12 Christian guys. This was recorded by Pontius Pilate. This was recorded by Rome. This was recorded by the Israel religious sector, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and regular citizenry that did have access to writing implements. It's not like they had printing presses back then. And he says a few things. He said, this temple, God's temple, is going to be destroyed. And it's going to be destroyed very soon. And the people of Israel are going to they're going to lose in a war, which at the time, everyone's laughing at him. The Pharisees are laughing at him, saying, "Oh, you're going to destroy this temple, and you're going to have it rise again in 3 days, or rebuild it in 3 days." And what those idiots didn't know he was talking about was the temple he meant was his body.
Right.
And that body was going to rise again in 3 days, and it did. And that is the event, I think, that congealed the apostles to go from scaredy little cats running away in the Garden of Gethsemane to warriors willing to get this message out until the day of their death. And many of them met that death in some pretty nasty ways. But they knew they were they were going up against Satan's system in the day, which was the Roman Empire. Jesus says, and you can break this down to the day. Now, this is where I've relied on other people's work, but I've followed along and can do the math in my head that Israel would be reborn. That so from 33 AD, he says, your country's screwed because you're going to kill me. And God's already said what your punishment's going to be. It's going to be 7 times worse than the last time, and that was 7 times worse than the first time. That you can start to figure out. People have gone to this trouble. They figure out the actual dates. He says the temple's going to be destroyed. He says that this land, which is all abundant right now, it's going to be dead land for 2,000 years. It'll be dead until something incredible happens. We're going to bring Israel back yet again. How they're going to bring it back, he gives details about it. He says that it's going to not happen through war, which is the only way a nation really has been established. Even the United States was established after a war.
Yeah.
Find me a nation that was ever established by a vote. So he says also that all the neighboring countries will not allow passage into that nation. You won't be able to walk across borders. The only allies Israel will have will be those of sailors on Tarshish ships, and their young lions, which is the UK, Britain, and their young lions are, it's essentially the NATO alliance. United States, England, etc. He says that a man named David will be the one to announce the reforming of this nation when it does happen. Now, mind you, as he's saying this, then everything's great in Israel. Everything's moving along fine. They've got a workable relationship with the Romans. The Romans aren't really up in their business. They're letting them practice their Hebrew religion. It's not really the religion of Rome, but it's things are fine. He says that the currency will be wiped off the face of the earth, but it will be brought back when that nation's brought back. He says that the Hebrew language will be wiped off the face of the earth, but it will be brought back. He makes just about Israel alone. He makes a 50 to 55 predictions. There are other guys that break this down. So you can mathematically begin to look at this. So you look at the fact that how many nations have existed in the history of the earth that we know of?
Oh, my. Lot. They still change.
They're changing now. I mean,
Yeah.
I had to stay on current events just to find out that the Sudan broke into two nations. It's now Sudan and
Right.
South Sudan. The Congo broke into the Republic of the Congo, and then there's the Democratic Republic of the Congo, two separate nations. This is going on, and it's constantly, there's give and movement, and right now I believe there's 196 nations in the world.
Something like that.
It's about
yeah.
200.
So there'd be thousands.
So let's just say there's 1,000 nations that have ever existed. I have no idea if we're low or high, but we're not.
It's
far.
a good. It's a good
We're not
round
far,
number. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How
Make
many?
it easy for math. Right?
Yeah, that's what we do.
Let's do. Thank you.
Science
How many
is a liar
nations?
sometimes.
How many nations have ever been conquered, only to be reformed 2,000 years later, in the history of humanity?
I know of none.
I think 0.
Well, there's one.
Other than.
Other
okay.
than,
Yeah,
right.
that's what I meant.
Now that was a prediction. Now, of all the nations that this could have happened to, you're already right now. If you just look at that one prediction, you're already at 1 in 1,000. All right, so now you have a 1 in 1,000 probability. So for all you mathematicians out there, you'd put a 1 with a line, a horizontal line, and then you put 1,000 underneath it. There's a 1 and 1 in 1,000 chance that just Israel would be reformed, reborn. Now, a guy by the name of David Ben-Gurion is the one that announced the reestablishment of Israel to the world. What are the odds that a guy named David would do that?
Well, I don't know if you can calculate that.
Sure you can.
How?
How many names are there of people in the world?
Yeah, but I mean, there's. I think there's so many factors there.
There's people
that may have been like, "Hey, let's."
But
name
that's
our kid.
a long shot.
Maybe.
I hear what you're saying.
That one
You can kind of simplify it.
that
and
could be
say-
controlled because a faker could have just gotten a donkey and ridden into Jerusalem, but he'd have to fulfill all the other qualities, or it's meaningless.
That's what I
on
mean.
its
So
own.
the fact that his name is David, out of all the people that were born from the time he said it,
all the Jacobs, the Joshuas, the Jeremiahs, the Habakkuk's, all the names in the Bible, and it just so happens that they say a guy named David's going to announce it, and a guy named David does.
and I guess they could have known about obviously they know about the prophecy. I guess they could have found a guy. Hey, we got it. We need a David
Yeah.
to say this to make sure that this is true. I mean,
What about an Anderson?
but this guy, who is this guy? This David guy?
David Ben-Gurion.
Yeah, who is he?
He was a general in the Israeli army.
Okay, so there's another factor to include. Now he's a general in the army. They didn't just pick some guy named David. They had a guy named David that
No,
was qualified. He
David
the
was
general.
Ben-Gurion was the guy that was behind he was behind the reestablishment of Israel. He was in the negotiating room when the United Nations
Yeah.
was discussing the fact that, all right, we're going to give a charter. This is the land we're going to give you, blah, 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 blah. It's not like they pulled some dude off the street. Anyone named David,
Right.
send in your applications because just in case this country vote goes through, we're going to want you to be the one that announced.
There's just too many scenarios in that scenario to even, I think, and I'm not a mathematician, but you'd have to be really diluting your conclusions you draw when you come up with numbers to use to calculate with, that even that you could take what you come up with and just expand that even more. I mean, I don't think you can, it's possible to even...
This is simplified. Just indulge me with,
Yeah.
is there 1,000 different male names for Israeli?
Okay,
males?
let's say there is. This is 1,000.
All right. You can even do 1 in 100 if you want, but let's say 1 in 1,000 because I think there's well over 1,000. All right, so we now have nations that have been reformed in history. That's 1 in 1,000. Person announcing it, all things being equal, there's about a 1 in 1,000 chance. And David's a popular name, so maybe let's even make it 1 in 100. Okay. All right. So now you've got 1 over 1,000 times 1 over 100. All right. So now the odds of just those two things happening are 1 in 100,000. You guys following me?
Yeah.
Okay. Park that. What are the odds that it would be determined by a vote? Again, has that ever happened in history? That I don't know. Of
How
any,
do you determine that?
there again, how many nations have ever existed? How many nations have ever come into being by a vote?
That would, to my knowledge, that
I
would
think
be the one that would.
We're
the
back
only
to
one that's-
we're back to 1 over 1,000 for
Right.
that for that one, right?
None that we know of.
Yeah.
So someone's gonna now we're gonna need a calculator. So now we're gonna add another 1 over 1,000. Okay.
I'm still looking for baby names in Israel. And
Okay. So what's 100,000 times another 1,000 times 10 is 1,000,000 times 100 is 10 million times 1,000 is 100 million. Now, just to fulfill those 3 prophecies, there's a 1 in 100 million chance. Now, there's 52 prophecies here.
Right.
Now we also have to add in the fact that somehow it was going to be known that every single border nation, Libya, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, would have a blocked entry. How common is it for a nation to have a closed border with another nation? Let's say each one of those is 1 in 10. Here again, how many nations have existed in history? How many of them have had closed borders? Well, China we know has a closed border. That's an example of one. So that's a higher number than 1 in 1,000. But let's just there's a 1 in 10 chance that Libya would. There's a 1 in 10 not Libya, I'm sorry. There's a 1 in 10 chance that Lebanon would. There's a 1 in 10 chance that Syria would. There's a 1 in 10 chance that Egypt would. You follow me?
Okay, yeah.
Now we're adding those to our numbers. So we were already at 1 in 100 million. Now we add a 1 in 10 chance for those 4 nations. We now go to 1 in a billion, 1 in 10 billion, 1 in 100 billion, 1 in a trillion for all those nations to have blocked access to Israel. Okay, we're now at 1 in a trillion. You guys following me on this?
Yeah.
But we've only done 4 prophecies. There's a finite amount of prophecies. Like I said, there were about 52. And a guy by the name of, I either want to say Ken Johnson or Michael Heiser, does a wonderful breakdown. He goes through each of them, breaks down the probability of each. What is the probability that a language would be lost from history for 2,000 years and resurrected as an official national language? What are the odds of that happening?
I don't know how many languages are there.
Including dialects, thousands.
yeah.
But
yeah, regardless, it's you get your point.
here again, how many nations have ever been reformed and their language was brought back? Here again, we can do 1 over 1,000 because it's only happened once in history. So we add now another 1,000 times our 1 in a trillion. We're now at 1 in a quadrillion, and we're at 5 prophecies. You keep going, and now you've got a number that is so, you finish it out with all of those prophecies, and you've got a number that's so big that you have to start expressing it 10 to the 100th
Yeah.
Power.
and it comes out to it's like the 250th power, which means it is a 10 with 250 zeros behind it.
So you're saying there's a chance.
So
There
you're
are-
saying there's a chance.
There in the history of the universe, do you know how many seconds there have been? 10 to the 17th. How many grains of sand there are on all the beaches of all the worlds? 10 to the 15th, 10 to the 16th. How many stars do we believe exist? It's like 10 to the 20th power. And you're telling me that it's a random accident, that something was predicted so specifically that you can assign roughly. Now, we might be up, throw a few zeros off of it. We might be off a little bit. And it's not like one of them's wrong. It's not like, oh, they didn't really bring back the currency. That was a prediction. None of them are wrong. They're all right. The shekel was brought back. It is
Right,
the
yeah.
current. And you go through, and you're looking and we're just talking about the reestablishment of Israel. And there's only 50 or so prophecies about that. There's 2,000 in this book. And like I said, I've gone through about 300 of them to the point where you assign these probabilities based on your best guessing. And even if you round way down and even throw a 0 off of each one of your probabilities, you put that number together and you're dealing with a number that can only happen by scientific definition as a miracle. It's a miracle. It's the equivalent of, something 1 with 10 to the 10th power. So something with 10 zeros behind it. For you to accomplish that, that's the equivalent of you winning the lottery tomorrow. And again the next day. And again the next day. Winning it every day for 5,000 years. Mm-hmm. That's the probability. It's a number that's so big we don't even know how to feel about it. We don't know how to express it. You have to boil it down into things that another way people express it is you could put walls up around the state of Texas that are 5 feet high and fill the entire state with pennies. Trillions and trillions, quadrillions of pennies. And there are 10 pennies that need to be found in a perfect order. And someone walks out across the state, just leans down 10 times, picks up 10 pennies, and picks up those 10 pennies in order. That's the type of probability we're talking about. So when you start to look at it like that from the way a statistician or a mathematician does, and believe me, many mathematicians, they're not on television, because Bill Nye's on air instead. They run these numbers themselves using the same methodology they'd use to predict the probability of anything. There is actually a probability of life on other planets, which was, I don't know if it was developed by or if it was merely pushed forward by Carl Sagan. He took the number of planets. He knows there's life on Earth, and we already knew that there's one of 400 million stars in this galaxy, and then you multiply that by the number of galaxies, by the number of planets around, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, even if the odds of a star having a 1 in a million chance of having life on it, he goes, the odds that we will find life somewhere come out to some percentage that is very highly likely. There's a specific name for that formula. Maybe you can look it up. It's got a name. So there are ways to put statistical probabilities on things that are completely random, that are outside of normal experience. And the process we went through in a very simple way, just in the first part of this show, is how you might go about that. And if anyone out there has any of a background in statistics, do the math. I mean, God put you into a field of study which, if you apply it properly, you can know with certainty whether he's real or not.
Yeah.
And if you're going to base your faith on the fact that all of these predictions that have been made are merely lucky coincidences, dude.
Yeah, but evolution.
Don't get me started.
I was going to say, it's the same kind of statistics.
All the
with evolution.
scientists say evolution's real.
You can't know that. Well, they don't.
Septillion.
No, they don't. That's right. Yeah, they don't.
It says it's a septillion, by the way.
What?
What's septillion?
1 followed by 27 zeros, or 1 followed by 24 zeros. I don't know which one.
Oh, I don't. Yeah, who knows what the number is? What they call it?
It's huge.
Look,
Huge.
It's huge.
you can't affirmatively prove evolution, nor can you affirmatively prove creation. Now, we do know a few things. Existence has to come through either creation or evolution. There is no other way to get existence on this planet. There's no other choice. It is either positive or negative, black or white. And if you're going to say, well, aliens may have put us here, well, then the question gets extended to, were the aliens created or did they evolve? Okay, so is there another way to get life here other than it was created or it evolved? Can anyone give me something?
No, I think that's pretty well.
I've actually, this is rhetorical.
Yeah,
it's it. So since you can't positively prove creation and you can't positively prove evolution, can you discount one of them? Can you render one of them impossible through analysis?
Well, let me ask
and
you.
the answer to
Let me
that...
ask a question. Go ahead and finish yours, and then I'm going to ask you a question about that.
Well, the answer to that is, if you look at evolution and the theory, what really is behind it, and Darwin himself discounted it. He threw out all of the things we'd need to see for it to be real, and by his own definition, his theory would be wiped out. He didn't know about DNA. We've learned so much since then. We've already learned about mutations, and if we've got 15 billion lines of an information code, where does information come from? That does not randomly come together to form. You're not going to show up tomorrow in your garage and your motorcycle and car are starting a relationship that's going to turn them into a jet plane. And that's really what we're saying here. I mean, if really that is what evolution's based on, is that these things accidentally mix and mutate and something better comes out, lives long enough to reproduce
successfully,
and somehow, while this one impossible thing's happening, it's also happening with the female version of this too, so that they concurrently are mutating in the same direction so that they can procreate. So you can start to put, and mathematicians have done this, on the probability that evolution happened. And I've got a ton, and I'll give you some if you want. I've got a ton of quotes in this book from mathematicians that realized well into their careers, holy shit, I can mathematically prove evolution is impossible. Because the odds of it is one of those numbers, 10,
it's too
with
much.
250 zeros behind it. And all of a sudden these guys have a midlife crisis like I did, where you're just like, oh my God, that means we were created. Or at least, the way I thought at the time, evolution was guided by some intelligence.
Theistic evolution.
But it was never random, nor could it have ever been random. You can prove it scientifically, but if you listen to Richard Dawkins, the Bill Nye of evolution, and I challenge anyone to find me an evolutionary scientist outside. Give me a name besides Richard Dawkins. Can anyone out there do that? I've asked this question of probably 24 people in the last year. Not a single one of them can. How hard would it be for Satan, through one of his secret societies, to pay this guy off to go out and, hey, how would you like some fame and riches? All you have to do is keep proving this story. Debate like a stud. And we'll put you all over the news. You're literally putting your faith into a guy who does not know what he's talking about. You're banking your eternal soul on someone who is nothing more than popular, because he's really the only legitimate representative of that theory that at least has any sort of credibility in scientific circles. Find me one. I'm just throwing that out there as a challenge to the audience. Call me up. Give me. You should. If this is such a slam dunk, you should be able to give me 100 names. I'm asking for 5. Give me 5. You won't find them. I've looked. But you go ahead. Go ahead and do that. Is it break time yet, Kenny?
5-2.
Oh, 5-2. Okay.
Well, what's interesting about that, obviously I agree with everything you're saying, but what's interesting is if your theory is correct, right?
Which theory?
That evolution is false. That you've put on a very good argument that evolution is false, right? But the problem is everybody is being taught evolution. And we'd have to agree here that there's guys out there that are smarter than us, scientists that are doing all this stuff in government, wherever. Who is pushing this is the point.
Ooh, yeah, now you're thinking.
You know what I mean? Because if you could take that as a grain of as a chance, then you've got somebody else that's pushing this agenda, and that's what it is. It's an agenda, and now you find it.
Well,
with not only
when you are not allowed to, in grade school, teach creation, or you lose your job. And that same dynamic applies even up through college professors. And believe me, I've sat in on conversations where outwardly these guys are like, we know evolution's a bunch of bullshit. But if I try and teach a class that it's a bunch of bullshit, guess what? I'm unemployed.
right.
So I won't touch that subject. So my mom actually asked me a couple weeks ago, she goes, well, how do they do it? How does this? It's really sort of simple. We all know how secret societies work. You go in, you start doing oaths. We've talked about, they test you with each degree. We've done about the spitting on the cross test. You're asked to spit on a cross, degree 9 or 10 or something like that. And if you do it, they say, good job. If you don't do it, they say, good job. But if you do it, you're now up for the degree higher. And by the time you're done, they're asking you, literally, this is going to sound a little grotesque, but this is the truth. They're asking you to have sex with another member. And then they're filming it. So at this time, you're now you're in. It's now blood in. And if you ever turn on them, they're going to blackmail you, discredit you, release this. They've got you. Okay? They've got you. So what happens? The people that have money, who pull it off of their magic tree because they don't have to do anything for it, they just print it, they finance the campaigns of presidents, right? Presidents, trust me, you can be 50, 60, 70 years old and never learn what really goes on. It's easy. You could get through life in a bubble. Some guy like Barack Obama comes out of nowhere who's got no birth certificate, no track record. And I lived in Illinois when he supposedly was a community organizer, becomes a senator, gives a speech at the Democratic National Convention. Every media organization in a coordinated fashion starts talking about how this guy would be a great president. And with no experience whatsoever, this guy becomes president. Well, it takes money. And what happens is along the way, the people that fund you are the heads of corporations that are working in a coordinated yet unpublicly disclosed way. Where
not only that, it's not only what I find interesting, it's always put off on other areas. So you can never tie it down to the Bilderberg group or this group or that group. There's so much that's
they're
spread
using
out.
It's Adam Weishaupt's own strategy. He's like, we will never operate in our name. Mm-hmm. We will always operate in the name of others. And that is how they operate. So president then gets into office. Now, here's where the real power comes in. Because what does the president do? You going to tell me Barack Obama knew 48 great judges that he wanted to appoint to all these different circuit courts? Fuck no. Do you think he knew people that were really great at education, finance committees, military appointees, yada yada? Guess who gets on the list? Those are the same guys in the same secret societies whose oaths and loyalty are foregone conclusions. And believe me, I've been a CEO of companies that had several hundred employees before, and I can control all of them from that top perch, even in ways they don't even know, they don't even observe. I could create incentive programs that pit them against each other if I so wanted. There's so much you can do. So Betsy DeVos just got appointed to the Secretary of Education. Now, the fact that she's getting destroyed by the media actually makes me think maybe she's a good guy.
Yeah.
Because the other education heads of national education, NEA, whatever. So the head person is the one that creates the curriculum, and from there, all decisions filter down. And because in general, we're a bunch of sheep-like kiss asses, and we want to do great for our boss. If our boss says, I want you to do X, Y, Z, you're going to really do a great old college job and give it a good old, and you're going to do your best to implement that agenda. So you really only need to control the top guy. That's it. And believe me, when the president's getting his list of here's who you're going to appoint. Most of these guys are down. Now, yeah, they do need to pass the Senate confirmation hearing, okay. But senators are dumb. Half of them are also bought off because where did their campaign money come from? From the same people that put the president's campaign money into his bank account. So then you get essentially several generations of the head of education that keeps saying, nope, we're going to keep teaching evolution. This is it, blah, blah, blah. And now we're moving into Common Core math, which is basically the final stages in turning us into the dumbest people possible. Just stupid little followers of whatever. Don't get me rolling on that. But my point is, so I explained this to my mom, and she actually goes, oh, so that's how they keep evolution. Yeah, that's how they keep it in the textbooks.
That's how they change history and on and on.
And you only need to do it for one generation. And we're going on our 5th generation. So now you've got the grandparents of people who have children, who have kids in school, and all they've ever known is education, is evolution, and now creation's starting to sound like a bloody fantasy. Yet it is statistically and scientifically a vacuum. It's a provably false theory. All right, Kenny's killing me, and he needs a break. We're going to take one. We'll be back in 5, and we'll pick this, whatever this is. We'll pick it up.
Yeah, I like when you put numbers to stuff like that because it just goes to show you that it even like what I said is even that's diluted, right? Because you still have to take into account that for a couple thousand years, every person that ever existed had to make very specific decisions to make events unfold in a way that would even produce a situation that would materialize as exactly what the prophecy stated would happen. So you try putting numbers on that, I would argue that you cannot.
Well, see,
it's just too. It's even the diluted version. The odds are beyond ridiculous. It's impossible that it's not.
Well, they talk about a butterfly effect, right? You make a change here, and it totally changes the outcome of something else. That's when I go through and we start talking about prophecy and all this kind of stuff. I really think, and I said to you guys before, that this has already happened. This is not prophecy. This is basically saying this is what happens, right? God's outside of this.
Yeah, for God, it's already happened. He's just telling us a story from, in a sense, of his own history.
Yeah, the only thing about that,
future.
The only thing about that to be careful with is that leads into the line of thought that, it actually, if you take that far enough, it leads you right into nihilism, because if everything's predetermined, already happened exactly the way it's said, then you get to you can get in a place where it's like, what's the point?
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're basically going through, this has already happened, time's come back on itself. He says this is what happens, right? Now you have all these different things. We're still living it.
Yeah,
right?
and there is this strange ability that mankind has to alter it somewhat, right? So, say for instance, the destruction of a nation because of their, let's say Sodom and Gomorrah, stuff like this. Like, they could turn the corner, and now he may have them slated for destruction because of their ways, but if they turn the corner, we see examples of this in the Bible. If they turn the corner and they do the right thing, he kind of gives them a reprieve, right? He's like, all right, cool, you're good. But I mean, it might last 70 years, and they always inevitably end up screwing up again, and whatever, they end up getting destroyed anyway. But so there is this kind of fluidity about it where for me, in my mind, it's akin to, say, like making a movie. So for him, he can stop the scene and be like, yo, cut, redo it, but this time, let's do it this way, and then actually alter what the future outcome would be. Because otherwise, why would the Bible instruct us to pray the way it does if we don't have any influence at all anyway? Mm-hmm. So it's clearly not the case totally. But dimensionally speaking, see, he not being bound by time, he can rewind, make a change, fast forward, pause, right? He can do this like he's on, movie making software or something.
Well, what I would say, and you know, with your argument there, I understand what you're trying to say there. But let's say you have a person. This is a movie. You have an actor. This guy's supposed to do this. You know, when he doesn't do that, what do? Hey, new guy.
Right.
Right. That's the same thing you could say about, and I think some people have mentioned that Trump is possibly being used right now, by God to do what he's doing. And if it wasn't Trump, it could be any one of how many different.
Anyone.
It could be anyone. So, you know, all this happens, but there's that influence there, and if it's not you, then it's someone else. Or does that make sense at all? Or
yeah, kinda. I just I try to be careful with the notion that, you know, the future is absolutely predetermined.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are specific prophecies that those will, no matter what we do in between, right? If he speaks it in 33 AD, and if you calculate it out, and it's supposed to go down 2,000 years later, for that prophecy, right, it's going to happen no matter what, because he said so. Mm-hmm. But I think with what we would consider everyday life, this is a fluid condition. You see this with the economy, right, where if you look at the scope of things, you're literally just in the United States alone, you're talking about trillions of decisions people make every day. And anytime anyone tries to manage that, right, you see this social engineering stuff and the way they, you know, curtail everything and just get right in the way of it. It always fails no matter what. So it's almost like getting in the way of... If he says it's going to happen, there's nothing going to get in the way of it. Mm-hmm. Like it's just going to go down that way. I mean, it's proven just by some guys and some calculators.
Right.
While you guys were talking, I was just scouring very quickly a chapter in the book called Accident versus Intelligent Design. You guys want to hear a few quotes?
Sure.
Let me put these in chronological order really quickly. Let's see here. Okay. Now, this has been going on for a long time. Oh, okay. The first one that comes up. This is a guy we talked about a couple weeks ago. Remember I was telling you the story of Lewis Trenchard Moore? Mm-hmm. And people thought, well, he was a Princeton professor and the name was spelled Moore, and it took forever to figure out, no, it was the University of Cincinnati. He gave a presentation at Princeton, and it's More. And he's an admitted evolutionist, but at least he says it in the framework of, that is what I believe, but I can't prove it. His quote, 1925. And every quote I'm going to give you is in a book, in a scholarly journal. It is in the writings of this. These are going to be scientists we're talking about here. I'm just going to run through a bunch of them and not do too much build up on the guys. But his quote is, the more one studies paleontology, the more certain one becomes that evolution is based on faith alone, exactly the same sort of faith which it is necessary to have when one encounters the great mysteries of religion. Next one, Dr. Austin Clark. He's an American zoologist, entomologist, and he's a Smithsonian Institute biologist. He said this in 1948. No matter how far back we go in the fossil record of previous animal life on Earth, we find no trace of any animal forms. We find no trace of any animal forms which are intermediate between the major groups of phyla, the major species. Scientists have sometimes come up with a few things that they have elected as candidates as transitions, but on a later, closer examination, these have been seen to be misrepresentations. There are no such things as missing links. We may as well quit looking for them. And links, plural, thank you. At least he admitted that we are looking for missing links. We're not looking for one thing that... There's not like one species that connects us to apes. There would be thousands of missing links. We have not found one. One.
Right.
Anyhow, next one. Stanislaw Ulam. Oh, this one's not verified. I highlighted. I'll just give it to you. He wrote in 1966, it seems to require many thousands, perhaps millions, of successive mutations to produce even the easiest complexity we see in life now. It appears, naively at least, that no matter how large the probability of a single mutation is, should it be even as great as 1/2, you would get this probability raised to a millionth power, which is so very close to zero that the chances of such a chain seem to be practically non-existent. Meaning the chances of evolution happening are non-existent. These are scientists, by the way. Here's another one. Dr. Murray Eden. He said this in 1967. He's an American researcher, professor of chemical, electrical, and biophysical engineering. These are not guys with tinfoil hats. These are geniuses. These are the most learned in their fields. These are guys that grew up learning evolution, thinking out of faith that was true. Something happens in their career where they feel compelled to write about the fact that this is not the case. And like I said, if there were guys out there that came to believe in evolution because of something scientific, I'd include them, but there are none. It's a snow job. Anyway, Dr. Murray Eden. It is our contention that if random is given a crucial interpretation from a probabilistic point of view, the randomness postulate is highly implausible, and an adequate scientific theory of evolution must await the discovery of new natural laws, physical, physico-chemical, and biological, meaning it, from his perspective, completely unproven. Sir Fred Hoyle, we've probably all heard of him. If one proceeds directly and straightforwardly in this matter without being deflected by a fear of incurring the wrath of scientific opinion, one arrives at the conclusion that biomaterials with their amazing measure of order must be the outcome of intelligent design. Mark Ludwig says, Darwinism requires belief. It has become the scientist's paradigm, and he is rarely able to admit that it is fragile and charged with philosophy. Dr. Edward Granville. There are a good many mathematicians, physicists, and computer scientists who are appalled that Darwin's explanation for the development of life is so widely accepted in the life sciences. Anthony Flew. He is a British philosophy professor. He said this in 2009. Yet biologists' investigation of DNA has shown, by the almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life, that intelligence must have been involved. Richard Dawkins, here's what he says. Now tell me what you guys notice about his comment.
All right, I can't wait.
It is absolutely safe to say that if you meet somebody who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked, but I'd rather not consider that.
Wow.
I liked him on Hogan's Heroes, though.
Wait. Hogan? Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
This is the guy probably responsible for more souls going to hell at the end of the day. And the beauty is, when you can't argue something from facts, from knowledge, what do you resort to? I know I do this in my personal life. Name calling.
Right.
You're a bitch.
Yeah, you fool.
You're an asshole.
Yeah, you're,
You just are.
immature, foolish.
Do you understand what that's really saying about?
Yeah. I like the added comment about wicked. He'd rather not consider that, because that would be claiming that wicked is actually a real thing.
Julian Huxley. Now this, I didn't have a date on this one yet. Julian Huxley is out of the... I'm pretty certain it's a demonic family. And what's crazy is because these guys have to be credible in their own circles, because they're surrounded by scientists who, off the record are like, Julian, really, how did you arrive? Why are you so certain of this theory of evolution? He goes, It is clear that the doctrine of evolution is directly antagonistic to that of creation. Evolution, if consistently accepted, makes it impossible to believe the Bible. Well, that's very true. I think you just found out the motivation.
Yeah, that was it.
Someone's motivation deep down. Because if you do believe evolution, you can't believe the Bible.
Right.
And what did God say would be happening in the latter days? There would be this massive falling away. In researching this book, I have literally read books that I never dreamed I would read, from Plato's Republic to, from Voltaire, to blah blah blah, to modern day. It's really only been since 1900 where this idea that God is not completely involved in our lives has been adopted by the leaders of our society.
Yeah.
Up until then, every president knew it, every congressman knew it, every judge knew it, every scientist knew it. Even Einstein was. People think, oh, well, Einstein's an evolutionist. Like hell he was.
Yeah.
He was an absolute creationist that he swore. In fact, he said, it, in his own words, it pisses me off when people use my name to say that evolution's not true, because that is absolutely not the case. Philip E. Johnson said this, and I don't have the years for some of these guys. He is a law professor, so he's teaching at the college level. As we have seen, the positive evidence that Darwinian evolution either can produce or has produced important biological innovations is non-existent. Darwinists know that mutation selection mechanism can produce wings, eyes, and brains, not because the mechanism can be observed to do anything of that kind of like your fruit fly example, right. Dave. Millions of generations of fruit flies, and they can't get these things to do anything else but be fruit flies. So he's saying that we can't observe the mechanisms can produce wings, eyes, and brains, not because the mechanism can be observed to do anything of that kind, but because their guiding philosophy, that is, their guiding beliefs, assure them that no other power is available to do the job. The absence from the cosmos of any creator is therefore the essential starting point for Darwinism.
Right.
So is that really scientific? If you go into something with an assumption that automatically mitigates.
No, that becomes a religion.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it is. That is actually, and what people don't realize is by believing in evolution, they're actually wearing a religion on their forehead, and they are ignorant of the fact that that is the religion of the devil.
Right. That's right.
Okay?
Yeah. But these things, you remember that fish that they caught, I think it was off South Africa some years ago, that was a coelacanth, I think they call it.
Okay.
Well, it's actually a extinct fish. So and I might have this number, give or take, whatever, but this thing they have fossils of it, stone fossils, like in rock, right? And it went extinct 300 million years ago. Whatever the number, it's like that, right? I don't know the exact number, but it's like that. So, but some fishermen, like within the last, 20 years at least, right?
Oh, we've been finding,
pulled one out of the water on a hook, and it's a coelacanth, and it matches the fossil exactly. The amazing thing to science on TV and on the TV shows is that here's a living fossil. The amazing thing to me is, why does it look the same, and why is it in... Oh, that's weird. Why is there a stone fossil of it, but here's one clearly alive? I mean, they pull out of the water, swimming around. And it's exactly the same. Bone structure, and they could tell as soon as they looked at it what it was. So this thing didn't... Not only did it not go extinct 300 million years ago, it probably wasn't even here 300 million years ago in the first place, and it didn't do something else either. It never evolved. It stayed exactly the same for 300 million
Well, no, we
years.
split off from them, and we're here now. That's where we came from.
Oh, but they just decided that they like to be fish, so they just decided not to evolve, I guess. But they ignore stuff like that. It's cherry picking. That's how you know that it's clearly a faith-based religion. That is akin to animism. It's akin to
what's animism?
It's like what most tribal Aboriginal people, the trees, the water, the sky. There's gods for everything. Every even rocks have like a soul and some energy. Like it's that, right? It's naturalism kind of. Naturalism would probably be like the more, I think, like modern version, but I think animism is actually the oldest known religion, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I'll talk about nature. That's what's becoming with global warming right now. This whole climate change argument.
Well, I know. It's just now we pulled out of this Paris climate agreement. Because we pulled out of it, we're probably going to be underwater next year now because of that.
You know, it's so funny.
How irresponsible. The greatest threat that we face right now being climate change. This is totally sarcastic, by the way.
Yeah.
Don't worry about this treaty, okay? Because it really doesn't mean anything. It's just kind of a feel-good
But global
treaty.
warming, Tony.
This is a treaty that they said, you don't have to follow. It's just everything's voluntary, blah, blah, blah. As soon as we pulled out of it, what do they say? What are you getting out of the EU and Juncker? You can't pull out of that. There's huge
climate.
consequences.
Yeah, the
for
climate
this.
change.
There's huge consequences for all that. Wait a minute. I thought this was voluntary.
There's no consequences. What are you talking about? What are you going to do?
That's what I'm wondering. What are they going to do?
What are you going to do about it? But anyway.
But see,
Tangent.
there's these agendas. And I mean, this is all perfectly. You find this and you say, if this is going on, you can see how all these agendas are lining up. It started here. It's gone to here. They're actually doing this whole evolution and stuff because it's of what it is. You've watched it evolve into, if you don't agree with it, you're crazy. You're fruitcake, right?
You're a fool. Actually,
That's right.
They'll call you stupid.
Right. And you can ask people about it who know nothing about it, right? But yet you're the fool for not believing it. So if that's an agenda going on, which it is, you can write this all down and put a timeline on it and all this kind of stuff. Goes back to the original question. Why and who?
Well, I haven't. You know what my answer is now.
Exactly.
The devil, and through his literally his earthly agents, which this book that's predicted everything else to scientific certainty in my mind, said that he would have agents on Earth, and here we have hundreds of people all over the Earth that are high-level Illuminati defectors. All say the same thing. Yep, we interface with entities, demonic entities. Sorry, folks. It's the way it is. It's just. I had a friend who I suspect, in retrospect, that he was himself in a secret society. And I have a few friends I suspect that aren't in them. They're sworn to such secrecy, and their loyalty is completely to their society. And they're just deluded because things are working out for them right now. They're making good business contacts. They're finding success. I'm not going to mention this guy's name. Went to college with him. I love the guy. He's recently became the mayor of a suburb of Chicago. And about 8 or 9 years ago, there were several other little hints. We're driving in a car together one day, and he said, Hoops, that's my nickname, Hooper, Hoops. Do you realize that global warming is a completely made-up problem that some people are using to get... And something along those lines. And this is before I was awake at all. And my heart sank. And I looked at him, and I'm like, I'm not going to say his name, but I'm like, dude, you've got to be kidding me. Are you really that naive and stupid? Now, the funny thing is, flash forward, he was abso-frickin-lutely right.
Yeah.
And I have to remember my reaction because that's the reaction other people probably have around us when we're dropping some knowledge on them about what the truth is, which is like, I actually thought, what a poor sap. But I frankly think secret societies, they're fueled by illumination. They're the enlightened ones. And I think when you're a small degreed, moving up kind of guy, they start to give you some secrets. You guys want to know a secret at degree 4? Here's what it is. This whole global warming thing is bullshit. It's so we can keep our oil interests or whatever. Who knows? Who knows, dude? How do they get military guys to want to keep an alien, quote-unquote, an alien presence secret? Do you guys know how you would do that?
There's probably a lot of ways you could do that.
There's a lot of ways you could do it.
Yeah. Money,
That's one.
power,
Money only goes so far, though.
security,
People,
perks.
most people, even when a lot of money's involved, there's something in them. They can't do evil stuff. They need to believe they're doing it for a good reason. Now, enough people have fallen out of the military. I mean, there is no doubt Roswell and the incident over the Capitol in 1952. There's no doubt that there's something in our skies. That's just if you're not even there yet, turn off your radio and stop listening to this show because honestly, it's just this. This will never do you any good. So these guys, I'm going to summarize the testimonies of hundreds of people. These guys believe that a highly advanced civilization did crash here. They're concerned about us. They're our creators. They have hyper-advanced technology over us, and they are very soon going to intercede in the affairs of humanity. And in order to defend ourselves as a planet, we have to take the technology that crashed, and we've got to absorb that into our hidden, dark secret, dark budget technology so that we are able to defend ourselves as a planet when that time comes. And that's the snow job on the highest level military, admirals, Air Force. I mean, it's heavy Air Force. The Department of Defense, the underground DUMS, the Dulce bases, the Area 51s, because they're not allowed to talk about the fact that we're about to get invaded by an alien species and we've got to defend ourselves. And so they're working like mules to get our technology on a level where we can defend them. But again, it's all compartmentalized, the same way that the Manhattan Project workers, they didn't know they were building a weapon that was going to kill hundreds of thousands of people in one fell swoop. Had they known that, they probably would have exited the project, a lot of them. But they each did their little part for America, for good. And that's how you get people to, the sheep, to stay in line, to do their thing. Now, it's hard to realize unless you pull back and you see the whole forest here, because we're a specialized people, and that we take glory in being specialized. My friends that are in banking, they're banking geniuses. My friends in engineering are engineering geniuses. It's like knowing the tree in front of you really, really, really well, but that does not help you see a forest that you're in. And even if one or two trees get chopped down, you still don't get it. These guys, I was going somewhere with this. They're specialists. What was I going to say? They're specialists. The
forest for the trees is where you're going.
They don't even realize the end goal of what it is they're working on. And the level of technology that some dark elements of our government are really sitting on brings Arthur C. Clarke's quote right into the forefront, which is a sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Now, of course, when the day comes, the advanced technology that we ourselves, humanity, has been working on is going to be used against humanity. And a lot of people are just going to believe, wow, these must really be aliens from another planet. I mean, look how advanced they are. Not knowing that we're actually that advanced. Parts of us, free energy is a real thing if we want it. It exists. Magnetic power proves it. Solar power proves it. Why are we still digging oil for oil, burning the very thing that might be ruining this, quote unquote, ruining the environment, when we've got examples in front of us? There's a magnetic train that needs almost no fuel, can travel 400 and some miles an hour. These exist. You can, if you want, put some stuff on your house so you don't need electricity anymore to power it. It's natural. It exists. It's free. And I'm not even going to get into the things we can do with water. Of course, it's not in our textbook, so it must be a conspiracy theory, or it can't be real. It's such, dude. This system.
It is.
It's such. We are just going to have to live with the fact that we're going to sound strange to the type of person I was 6-7 years ago.
Yeah. So pretty much everybody.
So 9 out of 10 people are going to think I'm a flake.
Yeah.
But 1 out of 10, they end up getting it.
Yeah.
And that is, at the end of it, that's what a victory in our world looks like.
Yeah.
That is a victory. You can prove anything with charts and graphs to a theater of 1,000 people, and it does not matter how well you prove it. They're so indoctrinated with 30 years of being pounded with certain messages that the wall of their cognitive dissonance will not let them believe it, even if they see it. But some people can receive it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what separates. Do you know what's the difference between someone that can see it and someone that can't?
No idea. Except for the fact that, you can assume pretty safely, I think, that not everybody makes it to heaven, right? So that's just kind of like TV fantasy. We all end up there. It's actually not true.
But they tell you why you're not going to make it, and that's what you're talking about.
Maybe some people are just ain't wired to get it for whatever reason.
Because if they were, here's a stupid theory, okay? If they were, you wouldn't need a Bible, you wouldn't need religion, you wouldn't need all this, because they would just automatically be going, right? Interesting. We talked about that one topic, the gentleman we talked about from YouTube earlier.
Oh, Rob Skiba?
Yeah. I think one of the things that he said that was very interesting is that your name is on the list. You have a reservation, right? Whether you choose to use that reservation is on what we're talking about.
Yeah, if you're going to show up for it or, actually call and cancel it.
Right.
Which some people do.
Yeah, that's when I was explaining this to my mom. And she's like, and I'm like, look, because she actually wanted me to become a priest. Now, in a lot of ways, her prayers were answered because I now am sitting here talking about, in a lot of ways, this is a ministry, if you want to call it that. I'm still too science, methodological-minded type of person that I don't want to get into that Bible thumpery category because I like things that I can see and prove that I can discuss with another logical person. And she's like, well, why wouldn't God bring everyone to heaven? And I'm like, I'll bet you he wants to. But heaven, from everything I've read from his own mouth, it is a place of freedom. It's a place of free choice. And I think God will throw a lot of people like you, me, and Tony into someone's life to try to go, dude, wake up. Because once you die, your passport's stamped. You are now out of the country, and you're at the mercy of immigration of this new place. And God is not going to grab you against your will and force you into his kingdom. He's not going to do it. In fact, I think that has a lot to do with the entire human experiment. There was a rebellion in heaven. 1/3 of the angels fell. 1/3 of them. Now, we know that there was at least 10,000 times 10,000 times 1,000. So we're looking at, a trillion entities up there. And what did God not have? What was going through the minds of these angels as this spiritual war was igniting before humanity was even here? These are innocent creatures that have never heard or seen a lie. I could convince my son of anything.
Of anything, yeah.
And if my motives weren't pure, I could turn him into a murderer. I could do anything with him. Now, why God allowed Satan to do this or why he created, I don't know his ways. I do not. And I'm not trying to comment on that. But 1/3 of these innocent angels, not knowing any better, went with him. And all of a sudden, now humanity's on the scene. God, there's a poetic justice in everything he does. If you read Isaiah, I'm pretty sure it's Isaiah, you'll understand that there was a time where Lucifer, before he was Satan, he was clothed in jewels, and he was in the Garden of God, which I'm guessing was the Garden of Eden. He screws up. He gets booted. God puts humanity there instead. He's going to replace these fallen angels, I believe. This is my personal theory. He's going to replace them, these fallen angels, with humans that have chosen, whose loyalty is certain, who will fight for him, who want what he has to offer. He is not going to come in after you're dying or dead and yank you against your will to a place that you never wanted in your life. And I just don't think there's a human being that can get to their deathbed in the world today without having at least been offered or having been pitched or having been introduced to the concept of, do you want to go to heaven or not? I just don't think I don't care if you're in Africa or in the remotest islands. Missionaries have covered this whole planet. They've been doing it for 200 years. Thousands of years, probably. And so a lot of people they're not going to make that choice.
Yeah.
And
they're not. Some will denounce it.
And I discovered this philosopher named Heraclitus.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Who? And he said, oh, God, what was the quote? It was something along the lines of, men have what awaits them after death, they have no knowledge of, but how terrifying it is to go into it. Never mind. I'm
Butchered that one.
I totally, completely.
We'll just shred a quote here and there. It's
Butchered it.
fine.
Snopes says that's not true.
Yeah, Snopes. We checked that out. Snopes.
No, there are some sites, Snopes, Before It's News, Metabunk. And, oh, God, Metabunk I have a problem with because a lot of quotes, there's this one Tool on there, and I can't remember the guy's name. He's always going, oh, that quote, no one said that. It's been proven false. And I can't tell you how many times I've actually discovered that this dude is just speaking right out of his ass. And the thing is, it pops
And
up.
that's surprising, though, really?
No.
Yeah, but people will see that and go, oh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
BS, and go on.
But I will...
Right?
And they'll use
Right.
that.
And especially because it'll be the first or second or third in my search results going, oh, this wasn't true.
Well,
and I've run across that
I
where...
saw it on Metabunk, so
Yeah.
it's got to be. That sounds legit.
Now, why would someone... What would motivate someone to have a career where all they do is discredit... I mean, that's what this guy does. He just discredits things. You see no revenue source. There's no... I can't think of a... You don't do it because it makes you feel good. I can't... The only thing that could be motivating this guy is a hidden agenda on his part that I can imagine. Because he's not even telling the truth. He's not
Right.
doing it for truth. Like, if all of these guys were right and like, wow, man, this guy he's really right. This quote never was said. And he's got a really good hit rate. He's in the 90% range. But it's actually, he's not. He's in the 50-50 range. And when
Yeah,
you look,
but he's on Metabunk.com, so that's where you go to find out if it's true, right?
yeah.
Right, so...
Here's an interesting one. I don't know if you guys have watched Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
You know,
I know some of his stuff.
Yeah, I've caught a few things. I don't watch it, but I've seen a few. You know, I know who he is.
Yeah.
It's been on TV shows. You know,
Stand-up
MMA.
comedy.
He's
Stand-up
close.
Yeah.
But I think he's been scared.
This is exactly what was interesting because I saw the YouTube, and you guys can look it up, where he says...
Flat Earth?
This is about flat Earth.
Right.
You know, he started out with flat Earth and kind of saying, well, this kind of makes sense, and you know, and the NASA stuff it's all fake. He's going on. He says on camera, if any of you, here, look, you want me to be a disinformation guy, you tell me what the truth is, and I will go out. I will lie to my mother about, you know, going to the moon and all this kind of stuff. He's basically said all this. He's felt that strongly about it. Now all of a sudden they show all these clips. Now he's walked all that back and totally against it. He said, no, they went to the moon. I didn't know what I was talking about. I was like, really? Well,
Well, I mean, when a contract is about to get ripped up in front of your face, you might change your mind on some things.
Or maybe
right?
something harsher.
That's what I mean. Anything. I mean, they can.
Joe, do you want to? And that's a guy you could be in a secret society and not even know it's nefarious. But someone approaches and go, "You're going to drop this. Your following's too big. You're going to drop this, and everything will be fine." Then maybe they don't drop it. And then maybe they do lose their job, like a Sean Hannity or who's the blonde-haired newscaster that left Fox about 5-6 years ago. He's the one that came out and said FEMA camps are real, and then the next day...
Oh, who was that? I know who you're talking about.
And the next day he's like...
Glenn Beck.
Yes, Glenn Beck. He's like...
He's done a 180.
These FEMA camps are, they're out there, people. I mean, these things have been documented. I've seen them. I've had people report about them. The next day, he gets on the air again. He's like, guys, I know this is going to sound like someone got to me.
Right.
But I made a mistake, and these FEMA camps are not real. Now, here's how dumb. A lot of people take that, and they're like, see? He really doesn't think they're real. I go, how do you go from believing and knowing they're real, and then 12 hours later, you're back, or 24 hours later, you're back on the news, and all of a sudden, I'm just curious, what evidence came in that you were able to debunk this in 24 hours?
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with Rogan.
Yeah.
Did you visit all the sites that they say are FEMA camps to see that, there's really nothing there, it's just a bunch of cows eating grass? I mean, how do you get there so quickly?
No, he was told.
Yeah.
He was told A.
Oh my God, we're so dumb.
Ixnay on the FEMA
dumb.
camps.
We're
A.
screwed.
Right. Well, that's how it goes. And it gets even more layered the higher you go up in society. Once you get up to like leaders, our president, prime ministers, etc., people behind them. I mean, this stuff there's just no.
Well, there's so much they get on these people that
it's just the corruption is sky high.
Asking you guys individually, what would it take for you to turn a 180?
180
I mean,
from
the whole reason you're doing this is because you're putting out their truth as you believe you know it.
Yeah,
right?
We don't have a fat contract from CNN or Fox.
Right.
We're not living off of the sales of the material we do here. We're not winning a popularity contest. This does not help us make more friends. Like, what do you think our motivation is?
Yeah, right.
A lot of people, you're just an attention seeker.
But if someone were to come and tell you to pull a 180 and denounce your beliefs and come on and say, look, it was wrong, Jesus, and this, we got to kind of look at this. I mean, you would never do that.
And I'm sorry to say this, and people will think I'm an even crazier person for saying this. But even if someone said, if you don't do it, we're going to kill your son, I still would say I'm not retracting what I'm saying. So sorry, but we're talking about our souls and eternity here, and no way.
Right.
There is nothing. We will torture you and skin you alive. We will slowly kill everyone you love in front of you, and I'd be like, that sucks, but I'm not going to go back. I mean, at the end, we talked before you got here, where my head's going to be a bowling ball someday because I will not retract this. And I'm so certain of what we talk about as the truth that you're effing with your soul, and there's nothing. I've not been able to imagine anything. I can't.
No.
Is there something that could get to you guys?
No way.
No, I'm to
even
the point.
if someone threatened your family, like I will. Dave, if you don't pull off of this show, your family is kiss them goodbye.
Yeah, no, I would never. Certainly not on air. I mean, that's not something that would even. Because if you understand enough about this stuff that these people that are coming to you telling you it's so important to them that you go on the air in this hypothetical scenario and denounce Jesus Christ, then I already know that who they work for, and even if I follow what they say,
they actually work for number 2.
You know what I'm saying? So even if I follow what they say and do it and go through with it, I mean, it's naive for me to think that my family's safe after doing that. Right? I mean, it's foolish. At that point, it's like, okay, I guess my number's up then because I'm not doing that.
This life is temporal. It is nothing more than a testing ground.
It's actually a digital simulation.
It really, you can sign. I mean, even Einstein said that this This Kenny's telling me have
Time
to
to
tell
go.
you about Einstein next week. But this life is a persistent illusion, or persistently convincing illusion, somewhere along those lines. At the end of the day, folks, what's the main message here? All of this is meant to not scare you, not to get you to understand about our banking and currency or whether evolution is true or not. All of these are little pathways to get to the one way that will get you off this rock, and that is find out what the identity message, find out who Jesus Christ was. That is the only thing that really matters at the end of the day. And if you are heading to your deathbed and you don't know that, well, may God have mercy on your soul.
Yeah.
But our hands are clean because we've told you. This has been Down the Rabbit Hole. Where's the lead-in music, Kenny? I mean, I'm waiting for that.
out.
Come on.
There it is.
We'll see you guys next week.